don't do this, in actual fact. Because this may be an issue at first, and it may be your own individual comfort level. It may be in terms of how much experience you have in education, and so on. So I would suggest that you don't do this. What I would suggest you do in a case like that is that you still, though, have the approach. Here's what you can do. When a student questions you, legitimately, without your having said anything, you can convey the message without having to do an accuracy and academia type of statement. You can convey the message to the student that you value that dissension, and you value the fact that they've taken the time to question you, and that you can help, that can help you learn, and can help the other students learn. So you can still convey this message. If you're not comfortable doing this, you don't have to do it. None of these ideas, by the way, that we discussed, they're not like, it's like I described the other day, something that Marcin was talking about on the blog with another class. I said, these are menus of options. What we're doing here is we're trying to give you options. All right? The more options you have, the more powerful you are in terms of getting results, because you can be flexible. Remember I talked about one of the assumptions of neuro-linguistic programming, where it is stated by Bandler and Grinder, the founder of that particular science, is that they said that in any system, remember this discussion we had? The one with the most flexibility in the system controls the system. And what gives you flexibility? Options give you flexibility. Do you have to follow them all? No. In fact, I would recommend that if anything that we're saying does not feel comfortable for you right now, you don't feel where you are as an educator that you want to use some of these ideas, don't use them. Use the ones that you feel you can use, and push your comfort zone a bit. If you say, this is a little bit outside of where I'm comfortable, but it's just a little bit of a push, then do it. Because you'll get a little bit more comfortable when you try something new, right? But if it's way out there, don't try it. It's too much. And you're just going to discourage yourself. And that's not what you want. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's a very valuable point. You want to add something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a short comment that it's not that I disagree with students saying, okay, there is something wrong, I will do it differently. I just disagree with the idea of telling them at the beginning of the term, listen, this is the situation. So if a student tells me, listen, there is a mistake on the board, I will acknowledge it, I will thank the student for doing this, but so this I agree with. I just disagree with the idea of actually standing in front of my class in the beginning of the term and telling them, listen, I will be making mistakes.
So don't do it.
This is,
I mean, really.
This is what I meant, yeah.
And like I'm saying, I'm just saying if that's how you feel, I can't criticize that because that's how you feel. How can I say that's wrong, right? But what I do say is, don't do it. For you, it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you did it, you would feel uncomfortable, and you would have what we call incongruence. Sorry.
The ego, you know, he has.
Not the ego. You
I don't know that it's necessarily an ego issue.
The pride, you know, that you cannot really tell them something like this, right?
No. I agree with the students telling me that there is a mistake. It's not.
I don't think we can make that statement. Really.
I just disagree with telling them in the beginning, kind of. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it. Yes.
I agree with you also. I think different personality, different individuals.
Well, what I think you have
different personality.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can say something which other people can say, right?
Yeah. And what you can do is, you know, like I say, some of this does have to do with what you're comfortable with. And if he doesn't feel comfortable with it, he shouldn't do it. Yeah. Because remember, one of the biggest things you need as an educator, because I want to attach something to what Marcin just said, because this is really, really important. This is critical. So pay attention here for the next couple of minutes. Is something called congruence. Have you ever heard what congruence is? Okay. Are you guys familiar with congruence? I'm gonna, even though a lot of you are nodding your heads yes, I'm gonna describe it real briefly just to make sure that you understand it, and in the context we're gonna talk about it for a minute here. Congruence is when what I say and what I'm doing, I say I, but any of us, what we say and what we do and our beliefs about something are completely aligned, 100% aligned. That's congruence, right? Incongruence is, here, I'm sorry, I have to use an example here, but here we go, okay? Incongruence is this. I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Now, the fact is we know, as it turned out, and I'm talking that to Bill Clinton, it was a classic one, and everybody knows that he did. We know that. And he admitted it later. Okay? Now, I'm not here to make any moral judgments about President Clinton or anything. But that was incongruence. When he said that on national TV, at least 60 or 70% of Americans, and probably about the same proportion of people around the world, watched it and said he's lying. He's lying. You don't have to have a PhD in psychology to know, right? And we have somebody here who does have a PhD in psychology, and he even knew even more sure that he was lying, right? But the point is incongruence. And I hope you don't mind me using your example, Marcin, okay? But if Marcin were to do that, he would not be congruent, because he doesn't believe in it. Does that make sense? So for him, it's a bad idea. Don't do something that will make you incongruent. If you don't believe in it, if you can't buy into it, then don't do it. For any of these ideas. Work on the things that you can see make sense. Work on the things that you can see as believable. Now, am I saying don't do it just because it's not comfortable? Absolutely, I'm not saying that. You should try things that you're not comfortable with. But if you're not comfortable with it because you think it's wrong, then don't do it. Marcin thinks this is wrong. This idea does not go with his current belief system instead of where he is. Now that may change. I don't know. It may not change. Right? But for him to do it, he would become incongruent. But you don't want to do that. Don't do something that'll, conflict with your belief system, conflicts with where you are as a human being. Don't do it. Okay? So if you see things, for anything that we're talking about, if you see something like that, I can't do this, don't do it. Find something else that works, okay, for you. All right. So I thank you for that. That's very valuable. Let me just continue. I want to bring up some other ideas here. Interesting on page 118. I love this. I'm going to read a little bit from it. Okay, we're not going to do an activity on this one because our time is a little bit limited now. We're going to pick up maybe one more activity, but not on this one. I'm just going to talk about this a bit. But this is really interesting because he says, we'll go through here. It starts, a profound narrative capable of generating interest. Here's what he says. Here's the story. This is the story. Okay, and see if you can connect to this. I am referring to a story that says the following in 100 different ways to students. Here's the story. You come to school to learn important facts and enduring truths. Your teacher knows many of these. Your textbooks, still others. It is not your business to know where they came from or how. It would, in any case, be a waste of valuable time to burden you with the mistakes of those who thought they had discovered important facts and enduring truths. School is not a place for documenting error, but for revealing the true state of affairs. Now, what is Postman? Now that's a rather sarcastic. I'm not going to be. Let's not pull any punches. That's pretty sarcastic. What he's basically saying, though, is we tell our students, and we do this, whether it's in our books, and a lot of us it's from our books because I think a lot of us don't have that kind of personality, but in our books it's there, and some of us even do it as teachers, is that I'm the one who has the information you need. Don't question me. In the military, we used to say to people, like a corporal or a private, who would say, I think this, and I hated this. I was a captain, okay, but I really did not like this attitude. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't do it, but there were people that did it, that I saw them do it. This corporal would say, I think, and the sergeant or the captain would say, you're not paid to think. Cut him off right there, before he gets a single word out about what it is that he's critical of. That's insane. Everybody's paid to think. Students are paid to think, whether it be with grades or awards or whatever. You're paid to think. We're all paid to use the abilities that we have. It doesn't matter if you're a janitor or what. It's interesting. Many years ago, Dr. Stephen Covey, who we've talked about in several contexts in this course, Dr. Stephen Covey was giving a seminar. And at this seminar, it was, I'm not real sure which city it was in, but it was a very international audience. There were Japanese business people there. There were people from several areas in Asia, Indian business people, and so forth. And there were Americans and Europeans. And towards the end, this would have been the sort of early 90s, I think is the time frame. Towards the end, one of the Japanese business persons put up their hand and said, Dr. Covey, I'm going to tell you something. And Covey said, yeah, share it with us. We want to know. And he said, the industrialized West is destined to lose. the battle for the next great advancement in industry and in technology. And he said, and the Asians, the Japanese, the Koreans, the Chinese, even to a certain extent the Thais and others, but the Asians are destined to win. And Covey said, why is that? And he said, I'll tell you why. He says, because in Japan, and this guy was from Japan, he used a Japanese example. He says, because in Japan, we believe that everybody can possess the next critical piece of information or the next critical idea that can save the company or bring it to the next level of advancement. So if a guy on the floor who's a janitor, whose job is to clean the floor, comes in and says, we should do this to produce this car better. I've seen the way we're building this car and there's something wrong, and this is what's wrong. And if the CEO, the top guy in the company, hears it and looks at it with his team and thinks it makes sense, then they change what they're doing. He said, but in the West, and this is true in Canada, it's true in America, it's getting better, but it's still true to a large extent in the West, in the industrialized West, the UK, Germany, and so on. The top possess all the knowledge. The CEO, maybe a few of the floor managers, but basically we're talking CEO, vice president. They possess all the knowledge, and all the other people are stupid. And so these guys tell these guys what to think, and they just follow orders. And that's the mentality. And he says, we're going to kill you. We're going to kill you. And you know what? It's already happened. Let's be honest. Let's look at what's happening in China. Let's look at what's already happening in a lot of these countries. And look at what's not happening in America. Look at the collapse of the American economy, to a large extent because of dishonesty, let's be honest. You know, I mean, let's call them fraudulent banking practices. I mean, that's what they were. Okay? But the point is that everybody is involved and everybody has knowledge, and that's what we're talking about. Okay? That's why I so much appreciated the language of yours, Loyal, than your group. Not just you, but your group that put together something to where you were talking about this cooperative endeavor. That's what we're talking about. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's the strength in that. Okay? Let me continue on. Teachers as error detectors, another value idea. I'm going to pull up one more, and I want to talk about a brief story. It's a true story, okay, that I think will illustrate this. He talks about everyone makes errors. I'm reading from page 121, second last paragraph. The first is that everyone makes errors, including those who write about error. None of us are ever free of it, and we are most seriously endangered when we think we are. Let me read that part again. We are most seriously endangered when we think we are. If you think you don't make mistakes, you're dangerous. You are dangerous to everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're a student, it doesn't matter whether you're a president, a chief executive officer, you're dangerous. Pardon?
That's very true.
Yeah. If you think you don't make mistakes, you become a danger to everybody. Okay? That's a very good point. And now there is almost an infinite supply of error, including our own, which should provide teachers with a sense of humility. Incidentally, assurance that they will never become obsolete, because you can always pick up on more errors to fix. As a teacher, you're never going to run out of a job. Don't worry about it. I want to mention something. He doesn't mention it in here, but it's implicit. Means it's applied in everything that Postman talks about. It's admitting your mistakes. The student says you've made a mistake, you admit you don't blow it off, you don't say it's not important, you don't say, oh well, as though it doesn't matter. You admit your mistake. Admitting your mistakes is very, very powerful. I would tell you I'm going to give you three presidents. I like using examples from politics, you probably know it's in sports too. But it's examples people can usually relate to, because everybody's read about it or heard about it, right? Three American presidents. President John F. Kennedy, President Bill Clinton, and President George W. Bush. There were three huge mistakes made by each of the presidents. Okay? In the case of President Kennedy, it was something called the Bay of Pigs fiasco. He made a decision in early 1960s, and in actual fact, the truth is it came out later, he was never in favor of this. The CIA convinced him to do it. But nonetheless, he made a decision to basically send in a small group of Special Forces troops to try and take over Cuba. It turned into a disaster. Most of them got killed, if not all of them got killed, I don't remember, but the majority of them were killed. And it